So welcome to the SLRP 2026-27 Grant Round Information Session. So my name is Alyssa Bates and I am the Grant Coordinator for the Special Local Roads Program. The purpose of this session is to provide prospective applicants with information about the Special Local Roads Program and the application and assessment process. This session is intended for South Australian local councils and regional LGAs. So I'd just like to do the acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the First Nations people as the traditional custodians of the land, and we offer our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We are committed to strengthening connections between First Nations people, councils and the broader community. So I'll start by giving you a background to the Special Local Roads Program. This program has been in operation in South Australia since 1985, and it was established under the joint approvals of the South Australian Commonwealth and local governments. The SLRP is built on the premise that the whole sector benefits from councils pooling a portion of their funding, and currently all South Australian councils contribute to the program. Each annual grant round is open to all South Australian councils and other bodies specified in the SA Local Government Grants Commission regulations. SLRP funding prioritises local road projects that improve regional and metropolitan road networks for economic, social, environmental and safety outcomes for the benefit of councils and their communities. So the available SLRP funding for each grant round comes from each South Australian councils pooling together a portion of their federal grant funding. The funding streams that make up the SLRP are 15% of the identified local roads component of the Commonwealth Financial Assistance grants, 15% of South Australia's supplementary local road funding in available years, and 15% of South Australia's allocation of the Roads to Recovery program. The program is jointly managed by LGA and the South Australian Local Government Grants Commission. LGA is responsible for the grant management functions of the program and providing the executive support to the Local Government Transport Advisory Panel. The Grants Commission is responsible for the financial aspects of the program, including final recommendations for funding to the Federal Minister for approval. LGA established the Local Government Transport Advisory Panel to undertake the assessment of the SLRP applications and to support the governance and operations of the program. And this includes reviewing progress reports and acquittals for funded projects, assessing applications for extensions and scope amendments, managing dispute resolutions and reviewing SLRP policies. The panel currently consists of 4 members from local government, 1 member from the LGA board, 1 nominee from the Minister for Local Government and 1 nominee for the Minister for Transport and a senior officer of LGA. The governance of the panel is supported by the terms of reference, and there are 2 key policy documents that support the program, being the SLRP funding guidelines and the return of unspent SLRP funds policy. So this figure provides a picture of the application and approval process for the grant round. Applications are submitted by a council to LGA through Smarty Grants, and at the closure of the grant round, all regional applications are provided to their regional LGA for comment, so how they fit into regional prioritisation processes. The Department for Infrastructure and Transport also receives copies of the metropolitan applications for comment, and LGA reviews both metropolitan and regional applications as part of the LGTAP assessment process. The panel then review and assess all applications against the assessment criteria that is set out in the SLRP funding guidelines. In doing this, they take into consideration the comments from the regional LGAs, the Department for Infrastructure and Transport and LGA. LGTAP then makes the recommendation to the LGA board, who review and make the recommendations to the South Australian Local Government Grants Commission. and the Grants Commission makes the final recommendation to the Federal Minister, who formally approves the successful projects and notifies the successful applicants. So given the number of approvals in this process, it does take time, particularly as the Federal Minister is responsible for making the announcements on the projects that are being funded. And it is anticipated that the outcome of the assessment will be announced in September. So these are the important dates to remember for the 2026-27 SLRP grant round. And due to the tight timeframes, extensions are unlikely and will only be considered in extreme circumstances. And if an extension is approved, it will likely only be for 1 to 2 days. And applications must have been started in Samadhi grants for an extension request to be considered. All applications must be submitted via the LGA's online grant management portal, which is Samadhi Grants, and the link is included in this slide at the end or down there and on LGA's website. And just a note that because the final announcements can be as late as September and maybe October, the LGA will write to all applicants following the LGA board meeting in July to provide informal advice on the recommendations that will be made to the Federal Minister. So we do request that you please make sure that your program timelines take into account these notification dates. So the SLRP is open to all South Australian local government bodies which receive Commonwealth Financial Assistance grants and contribute to the SLRP, including South Australian councils incorporated under the Local Government Act 1999 and the Aboriginal communities recognised by the South Australian Local Government Grants Commission Regulations 2019 as local government bodies. Applications must be submitted by a council, so not a regional LGA or a grant writer. And to be eligible, an application for SLRP funding must be received via our electronic grants management system, and we use Samadhi Grants. It must include written confirmation of the eligible council's financial commitment to the project, and include attachments containing supporting evidence as requested on the SLRP application form. Applications must include a council contribution of 1/3 of the total project cost for rural and regional councils and 1/2 of the total project cost for metropolitan councils. And exceeding this will not result in a more favourable assessment, so just to note that. Applications must be for projects that meet the intention of the funding program, which is for strategic and/or significant sealed and unsealed roads and bridges. And examples of eligible work include road widening, shoulder widening, road sealing, and installing traffic calming measures. The funding guidelines are available on the LGA website, and you are strongly encouraged to review them prior to starting your application. And it is important to note what is and is not eligible expenditure, and this information is provided in more details in the SLRP funding guidelines. So the applications are assessed against this criteria, which is set out in the funding guidelines, and the funding guidelines provide a bit more detail about the key considerations for each category. However, it is just worth noting a few key points here. Applications must demonstrate how the project fits within relevant regional transport plans and the prioritisation work that regional LGAs undertake, or put forward an exceptional case as to why the project should be considered outside of this prioritisation work. Projects must be shovel ready and provide evidence that the project can be delivered on time. And that's where taking into consideration the notification and approval processes is important there. Please make sure that you check any necessary approvals, such as native edge clearance approvals and DIT approvals, and whether other competing roadworks are scheduled if known, such as SA Waterworks or NBN Works, and the application form will ask those questions anyway. It is expected that projects are completed within the year that funding is awarded, and if you have a project that is, say, 2 to 3 years in length, it is recommended that you consider rescoping the project into single-year components and applying for each stage in individual grant rounds. It's also important to be realistic with your funding request based on reliable quotes and cost estimates. Additional funding is not available throughout the year for projects that end up exceeding the estimated cost. On the other end of that, unspent funding at project completion may need to be returned. My final point is to remember that this is a very competitive grant process with requests for funding exceeding the available funds each year. So please do look at the funding guidelines before you start, and good luck. So this concludes the presentation, and so I'll now be opening the webinar up for questions. So if you've got a question, please unmute, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Hi, Alyssa. Shane here from the Port Pirie Regional Council.
Hello.
Just a quick question. If we're looking at a shoulder project, upgrading the shoulders of a sealed road within our district, would the grant then extend to like upgrading the whole road rather than just the shoulders, or is it very specific on what we can and can't do with it?
So you only want to upgrade the shoulders?
Well, not so. Yeah, that's the road that we have in mind. Needs shoulder widening and upgrades to make it safer. But we're thinking if we're going to go to that extent of fixing up the shoulders and doing all the stabilisation, then would the grant extend to a reseal of the existing section as well?
Yeah, of course. Yes. As long as you're very clear in your application those are the components, and there is a section in the application form that will ask for the different milestones. So you can itemise that out, the shoulder widening and the road resealing as the two components of your project. But yes, absolutely, that is eligible.
Yes. Excellent. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
And is it specific to just rural roads, like outside of towns, or if we're in Port Pirie and we want to upgrade an existing road in Port Pirie that has some strategic reference, is that applicable as well?
Yeah. As long as you can explain clearly how the road is strategic and significant and the benefits to the community and the wider community of that road, then I mean, if it's like a very back street road that doesn't get a lot of use, potentially not as strategic, but by all means I wouldn't want to stop you from applying. But as long as it is that you can demonstrate that it meets the criteria of the program, then yes, absolutely.
Cool. All right, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Is there any other questions at all?
Just in relation to the amount of funding across, how much money is actually available within the SLRP?
Yes, so the funding pool usually sits around anywhere between sort of 18 to 21 million each year. So it is quite a big funding pool. However, we do always receive more applications for funding than we do have available funding. So the program is oversubscribed usually. So just bear that in mind as well. So we do see projects that are reasonably smaller projects, so $50,000 to $100,000 that will be completed within 6 months. Then there are also projects that we do see that are seeking $1.5 to $2 million of funding, and we also look at projects that might be multi-year projects. That being said, it's not a guarantee that each year you will continue to receive funding. Certainly, if the funding is available, it is a favourable application, but We don't guarantee that if you are funded in 1 year, you will be funded next year. It does depend on your project as well. But yeah, so that is the total funding pool. I hope I answer that. All
And
right.
that's for South Australia only, like it doesn't.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
And is
only
there
South
any
Australia.
sort of precedence around, I guess, metro versus regional areas, like around how you guys prioritise the funding, or is it more
No,
project based and assessed based on your assessment criteria?
it is. It is an absolutely merit-based project, merit-based assessment based on the application, how well it meets the criteria, how the program meets the criteria for the so your application meets the criteria for the program. So and if there is, for example, a metropolitan road that is just really a really local metropolitan road that doesn't really provide any benefit to the local community, it's just the people that live on that street that will benefit, that may not be seen as strategic and significant. Similarly, if there is a regional project that just benefits 3 or 4 houses as well, I mean, it's not going to look as strategic and significant either. So there isn't, the panel doesn't prioritise regional over metro or metro over regional at all. It is very much merit-based.
Okay, and this is an annual recurring budget of that 18 to 21 million.
Yes, it is.
With the same sort of timeframes for submission and closure each year. Is that generally how this works?
It is. There is a possibility that for the next grant round, it may be opened up earlier, just to allow councils to have that informal notification before the end of June. Noting though that the formal minister and advice won't come until the same time of year, it's September. So it will make it a much longer process, but there are councils that will start to begin the work once they've received the informal advice from the LGA, and not wait for the ministerial advice. So at least we can give councils time to start planning. But that's just a maybe at this point. There will be advice early if that does change, but usually it's at this time of year. Yep.
And is the funding, is it eligible to do, I guess, preliminary investigation works, like doing design and so I guess, yeah, pre-construction activities, or is it more for construction activities and council need to fund all that survey, investigation, design work to be able to be eligible?
Yes, and yeah, it's for we want to see a road at the end of it, like the road works completed at the end of the project. So it wouldn't be, so if you were to submit an application that's just about planning and developing your project, that's not likely to be funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with regards to the maturity of the documentation around cost estimates and design works, is that what you guys are looking for? Obviously, with the other assessment criteria around it being, economic benefit and providing, I guess, that greater benefit to the community to be assessed. But I guess the maturity of the documentation, does that come into play as well around how much, I guess, planning work has gone in to make the project shovel ready, or is it more if we can proceed with this project next in this financial year, for example, then that gets assessed? Like, is it assessed on how mature the application is in relation to actually undertaking construction work as well?
Yeah, so yes, it is. So they want to know that, or the panel, sorry, wants to know that once you do receive advice that your application is successful, you can begin as per the timelines and complete on time. So if you put an application in and sort of say, well, now we're going to start planning for this and get the quotes, and we think it'll cost this much, that's probably the panel's probably going to look at that and think that's a little bit more of a risky project. But compared to a project that has got started getting quotes, or even if you can compare, we've done a project that's very, very similar and it costs this much based on these quotes. So we expect it's going to be very similar. We're going to build in a 10% contingency. That's reasonable. But sort of to do a bit of background planning work and preparation work and preliminary design work would be expected by the panel. You don't necessarily have to attach your preliminary designs, but just to say that you do actually have them, by all means you can attach them, but we do cap the number of pages that we will look at in the application form as well. I think it's either 10 or 15, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, we do expect that projects are quite ready.
And with the delivery timeframes for this round, the 26-27, when would be the completion date that would be acceptable for this funding round? Is it this financial year? Is it 26-27, or does that go out to sort of?
You can look at sort of at the end of 2027 would be reasonable as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Noting that, because you don't get to find out until sort of September formally, and then you obviously have to take into consideration the weather, if it's ceiling projects, if it's high tourism season, if you've got a road that impacts on that, you don't want to be doing anything over that period. So there's a lot to take into consideration with your timeframes, and the panel is aware of that. So
so it's not within the 26-27 financial year. It'd be within, if you were to be successful, for example, and you're saying you get notified in September, if you were to run procurement and you're not really going to be starting into the new year, into 27, that gives you 6 months within the financial year. You're saying it would be able to be out to the end of the calendar year?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one. No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Right. Is there any other questions? Well, I'll close it there then. Thank you for your time this morning. I really appreciate that. Just a reminder that the applications do strictly close at 4 p.m. on Monday, the 27th of April. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. These are my details here. And you can also jump onto the SLR webpage, which has got a lot more information. And I believe there is a link to my email address on that website as well. And just the last thing that's probably very useful is this is the link to the Smarty Grants page, which is also on the SLRP website as well, if you need it there. So I'll thank you for your time and I'll close it there. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.